The first one, strategies or games for teaching a young learner how to sweep.
So I have sung lots of songs and more songs, but as I've kind of rethought this recently, and I know it depends on your students, and yes, they absolutely need to learn how to sweep their cane. But if you look like the New Mexico, they don't even, I don't know how young the learner is we're talking. If I think the New Mexico Bertha 6, cane technique beyond holding a cane in diagonal is not even covered. So I think sometimes I'm too focused, and I know really to have the ability to use your body to make all of those movements doesn't even come until age 7 or 8 at least. Is that, am I off on my numbers there? But so in my newest little ones, I'm much less worried. As long as we've got a strong diagonal technique, I want to wait until they're really capable of doing that before we even think about it, which sometimes takes a lot of education of the people around them, because I've introduced 2 canes to littles recently, and already the adults are like, oh, they're supposed to be moving it back and forth, back and forth. I'm like, we're not worried about back and forth. Just have it in front and on the ground, please.
Well, I've used songs as well, but we were just talking about this in a meeting last week that whenever we went to cane class, they gave us the Tiflo canes with the hook on the end. And I have used that with students for that reason. So I just hook it onto their cane close to the tip and we sing a song, and then I take it back and forth for them in the hallway.
There's also a cane trainer. Have you guys seen those? They're about,
call it a buddy cane.
Yeah, shoulder width.
On both sides.
Yeah, you hook it onto your cane, you hook it onto their cane, and you can sweep together. My kids have liked that before too. And singing songs. I've heard somebody tell their student to paint the floor, which I thought was really clever. Yeah, and it was kind of fun. Don't forget to paint the floor, and then they just start moving it and painting the floor. So that was kind of fun. That was for a little.
I would often tell families that it's like using a pencil. We don't expect children to be perfect at using a pencil the first time they pick it up. It takes a lot of time and practice to learn how to write. And so it's the same thing with a cane. It just, it's a motor skill, and they just have to practice it and they'll get there.
Okay, any other ideas? I'm trying to give you guys enough wait time. All right, the next one, and goodness, this one's hard. O&M for larger caseloads. And that was it, no specifics.
I have a very manageable caseload this year, which is very nice. But I did a lot of the same goals with kids that were in similar places. Like even if they weren't exactly the same, I would do the same goal. So that way I was only having to think about a few goals versus 20 goals. And that kind of worked out nicely, especially with my kids that could maybe like skip some things and come back to it later.
Something I found that's been helpful, and I'm not sure if it's something you'd want to, I don't know if we could share it or not, but I know Allied Independence did the symposium for IOMOS, and then they started something called Clarity, and it comes with lesson plans that are already made. So for the $15 that I paid a month to get access to it, I've got like lesson plans that I didn't have to think about, and I can just adapt. So I don't know if that's something you'd want to look into. And I always forget travel time. I dual serve. So I've got travel time and then planning. I historically forgotten to plan for myself or allow myself to stop and plan for O&M, which is not a good idea. Don't do that. Make sure you stop and look at your route before you take the kids on the route.
So Joan, not to put you on the spot, and it's okay if you can't think of anything right now, but what would be an example of a good lesson that you got from Clarity?
Well, recently they just put one out with all the route shapes in it. So I've been having the kids talk with me about intersection shapes. And then there's a whole route shapes page about what the IL and the U, or if it's in Braille, the letters that are used there. And then you can make them tactile. You can, a lot of it is PowerPoints, and you can print them. And then I've tactile taped over the top of some of them. I've drawn lines with the slate and stylus to adapt it. But it's already there, and there's like a residential bingo in there somewhere. So I just printed that sucker off, and that way they could write on it if they wanted to with a dry erase marker. And we could just wipe it off at the end of the day, and I could take a picture of it. So everybody's kind of bingo sheet look the same, but they're not always in the same places. So just little things. And every month is different, and they're taking people, if you have ideas, they'll take your ideas and share them too. So
That sounds good.
For making sure you have enough plan time, one thing I did last year was, like, if I was in a similar area, because I covered a lot of different areas, I would purposefully schedule kids far enough apart that I had a little bit of time, but not so far apart that I couldn't travel anywhere else and then get back to where I needed to get back. And so then that was like my sacred time, and no one could take it away from me because there wasn't a time for me to go anywhere else or serve any other kids. So obviously it only works if your kids' schedules line up correctly, but I had 2 days where I would purposefully have a chunk of time where it wasn't far, like long enough to go anywhere, but it was long enough that I could do something, especially if I was planning in an area that I wasn't familiar with.
I'd say when I was going to multiple districts, I really felt like I had to do a lot of education, explaining to people that O&M it's not necessarily a service that you're always going to get 60 minutes a week your whole life. It sort of waxes and wanes over your school career depending on what your needs are. And so sometimes it might be more intensive if you're transitioning to a new building, or you're learning a new skill, or you're going to a job placement and then you're working more in the community, whatever it is. And so just really doing all of that kind of training with everybody on the IEP team so that they understand it. And then also if there's an IA or a paraprofessional or something in the building, that you can do some specific training about O&M to sort of help you do some of that monitoring and reinforcing when you're gone. Not that they're teaching new skills, but they're giving you feedback about how the student's using it throughout the week, because you might only be there once a week or once a month. And so you really need those eyes on the ground kind of help you with that, but they need some specific training about what that looks like. I've done like books with pictures about, what does the appropriate cane technique look like, and a little bit of a description, and shared that with teams or with families, so that they sort of understand what we're going for here. And, just trying to be a little bit, I don't know, sometimes I'd get really creative with the schedule. Did those high schoolers have late start days? Could I do my O&M minutes while on a field trip with a student? Was there a way to sort of almost kill two birds with one stone and work in some stuff, within the schedule that was already existing? I think it's a little bit easier to be more flexible with that schedule when the kids are young. When they get to be in high school and they're earning credits, it's harder to pull them from things. So trying to find days when they have a half day of school, or maybe there's something else going on that you can make sure they're not missing too much class time, was always, I thought, was really helpful to think through. So
slight change of topic. Are you allowed to serve them if they are like late start, or if they're half day? Because I was told I can't when the school only runs 4 days a week. I can't pull them on the Friday. Is it
some districts would let me do that and some wouldn't. It depended on what was going on. or maybe I could use that half day to do some training with staff if they were in a professional development or something like that.
Okay.
I think it really depends on whether the district allows you to sort of, I know we've had this discussion about work hours and making sure that you're covered under liability and workman's comp under work hours. I think it really depends on the situation and what the district or the co-op tells you their parameters are. I mean, it's hard to work with students on skills when they need to do skills in the dark if you don't start in the morning or work after school, if you really need to work on those cane skills for somebody who has night blindness. So I think explaining that need can be really helpful. Or if you have a student that, needs to walk across the street to get to the football game to be with their peers at night. I mean, you really almost have to do that within this scenario. So, to make sure that they can participate. So I don't know. I think some people during certain times have been able to get their work hours changed. Of course, that's an HR district, co-op kind of question. But it, goes back to that educating them about the need for it.
For those of you who just joined us, please put your name and your email address in the chat. And if you can't, if you're driving, let me know and I will do that. And that way I can, oh, I was looking at Joan's chat. That way I can keep track of who else here and send you a certificate. So the question, you probably figured it out. We were just talking about O&M for larger caseloads. So does anybody else have anything to add?
I have a quick question. With the larger caseload, I have a pretty big caseload this year, and what I'm finding is I've got some new kiddos coming in with evals. I don't have a big chunk of my day to go do stuff, so I'm having to cancel kids or move this, and then it just snowballs. What do you guys do to be able to get those evals done on those big, large cases where you don't have time? Do what I'm doing, canceling and rearranging and trying to fill them in somewhere else? Nobody's answering, so I guess yes.
Do the best you can. I've canceled when I have to do evaluations and just let them know. IEPs and evaluations have to come first because they have to be done, and then I'll try. But I mean, even in the IEP, we've written in something to the point of, it's possible that due to sickness or due to, IEP meetings that your services might get missed. And we'll try to make them up, but we're human. And it'll balance. It sounds crazy. It seems like we miss too many, but I'm logging it using the New Mexico. I've been logging notes and looking back, I'm catching them, even if I don't catch them on the day I originally planned. It eventually all balances out.
I'll look like way in the future and do a scheduled special lesson where I try to work on like splinter skills, like riding the escalator or like navigating the mall or something like that. And so I'll take my older kids and like plan. I think 2 years ago, I planned for December, like all the way back in September. And I knew I was going to take 2 or 3 kids for that lesson. So we would end up like way over their normal time. So those were the kids that I would miss to schedule evals and stuff. But yeah, I just always had to look at the whole semester and not just week to week or even in a month to figure out where I can move things around. And I was always flexible because I went to so many different places. I didn't necessarily follow my home district schedule. So if a district was out that I normally saw kids on that day, I would try to see other kids on that day to make that up. But yeah, like it became like a quarter semester long like mapping project to figure out how all those kids would fit in. But
I have one idea, Robin. Recently, I had an eval that required a lot of observation, and because the student is walking but also uses a wheelchair, and that requires a lot of time, the observation piece. And so I really lucked out in that the TVI that works with the student would send me video, just because she frequently was in the hallway with the student, taking her from the classroom to a pull-out setting. And so she she just, while they were moving through the hall, she would send me videos, which is really nice for me to be able to look at over and over and over. It's almost better than if I had been there to just take notes. So that was one way that I could save a little bit of time, was relying on videos that people send. It's a thought.
Okay.
Anybody else want to help Robin out? Okay. In the chat, we have Jenny said she missed about teaching littles how to sweep. And something she does is uses 2 paddle drums, and the kid sweeps and hits the drum as he goes, singing a song after he gets the idea. So he keeps beat on the drum and as he goes where I go with it. Cool.
Yep, that's fun.
It's fun.
Just Penny came up with an idea to attach like dowel rods to the drums so you don't have to bend over as much. I had flimsy sticks attached, so she did a much better job at upgrading my paddle drum technique. She's handy like that.
And Pam wants to know Joan's story.
I went through and texted Pam, but I'll share it with you guys. I've gone through, I just had to re-up my COMS this year. So I went through and did all the hours and talked to ACVREP. And just so you know, if you haven't had to do that yet, you have to list the 5 years worth of services so you can get that credit of 50 points. Mm-hmm. In order to get that, you have to have somebody in your direct supervisor sign off that you did all those hours. Well, according to my home district, my co-op, I'm only listed as a TBI. I am not listed as COMS anywhere. There is nothing in my contract. When I get a contract at the beginning of the year, it only says TBI. And I've talked to my boss about it, and he says, well, we hired you as COMS too. I was like, but it's not in my contract. So I'm not sure my liability insurance will cover it. I mean, the one I carry personally should cover it. He says, well, if you're working with a student during a school day, then the school's liability will cover you. I was like, but it's not going to cover me if I'm not listed as a COMS. And I don't know how to get it through to him that he actually has to list that. I'm not even sure what that looks like, but I just know that it's a little frustrating. And so, to be honest, we're talking about missing hours or serving outside of hours. Since it's my liability covering us, I'm okay with serving them on a day when there's no school in their home district, provided their parents are okay with it and aware of it. But it's probably not the best practice, and I don't like not doing the best practice. And I don't quite know what to tell him because my director does not understand that TSBI is different than COMS and needs to be listed separately.
My district doesn't have me listed as a COMS either, but they have my COMS certification. So, and I've talked to them about it. So they have both my teaching license with the vision on there, and they have a copy of my COMS certification, so they know. And I'm not an acting COMS this year. We have another person that's our full-time person, so I haven't had to worry too much about that. But I just, yeah, and I tried, you tried to explain, and people just, they don't get it. So
the next part of that, though, is not only looking at liability, which I was able to get through AER, but that liability only covers certain things. So when we went remote during COVID, some of those lessons wouldn't have been covered. Anything with a screen, technically, when there's not, I think it's the safety piece. They were talking about it at IOMOS, and one of the ladies in Alaska has been researching it. Technically, if something would have happened, we would have been in a lot more trouble if we had a computer screen or a cell phone while we were out on a lesson, using that as a way to keep a student safe. So even that has caveats. Definitely something we should look at later, though.
Yeah, that might be a good topic. Okay, let's move on to the next one, strategies for 45 and 90-degree turns in open spaces. Does anybody have any experience with that?
I have some students who are in marching band, and they use footwork to create a 90-degree turn that I've talked with my students about. And I use that to help at least with the 90-degree turn. We didn't really do 45, but the 90-degree turn we did because they do a lot of those abrupt turns and about faces. So if you have anyone who's in band, Jenny could probably speak to this too, is marching protocols are a good way to work with the footwork for those type of turns. And that also includes 180-degree turns as well, and 360s.
Yeah, I would agree with
see
Dee.
those.
It's a lot of times it's all about just that, like having a connection to another body part when you turn.
I'd like to see that because I've tried that. I did marching band for years, and I cannot get my kids to understand without physically taking their feet and moving them.
That's how we were taught in Texas. Anybody else from Texas Tech remember that? That's how we were taught to do the turns. But I came back from my training and my intern supervisor said, that looks too military. I would never do that with a student. But I thought it looked great. I mean, and maybe you wouldn't do it out on the street, right? But I mean, I don't know. I thought it was really effective to get the point across of the geometry of how your body is moving. Made sense to me.
Right, whatever works, right?
Yeah, I thought so.
I've used our gymnasium where they've got the tape on the floor. If the kids can feel that tape, then I'll take them to the corners and let them use the tape. I've got a little plastic. It's not the big carpenter square, but I'd like to have one of those. It's a small one that you can use for like quilting. And I give them that to show them what a 90-degree is. And then it also has a little pivot on the center, so I can stretch it all the way out to show them 180, 90, and the 45. But so I've used that, but to get their body to do that, that's a totally different thing.
Mm.
I've practiced it in relation to a chair, you know, having the chair in front of you and the chairs on your side and behind you and then on your other side, and just kind of worked through what does that feel like. But yeah, so I agree with the marching technique. It's sort of like that military drill, you know, how do they move their feet during that? Is, you know, where to start sometimes.
And another, I mean, if you're working on cardinal directions, you could do the hula hoop, you know, with the, I'll be your north, and you've got the, you know, like the locator dots, you know, at southeast, north, southeast, west. And then that's kind of the same idea, right? They turn their body so that they can touch the bump dot at, you know, east or south now. Just a thought on that. It's the same amount of movement.
Well, since you mentioned hula hoops, I remember learning at Texas cutting a hula hoop so that you just have the curve, and then using that with teaching kids how to sweep when they're little and just walking backwards in front of them and
Or a pool noodle.
Yeah, I think Debbie mentioned a pool noodle earlier. Oh, and before we go any further, I believe Katrina is our only new person. We're really glad to have you.
Hi, Katrina.
Talk to us.
Sweeping with little people, if you have them sweep into a chair too. When they start getting that motion, practice underneath the legs of a chair.
Yeah.
Comes to mind.
Speaking of little people, you guys want to hear a really cute story? My granddaughter started at the preschool down here for early intervention for her eye disability. And she's got a little friend that showed up with a cane a couple weeks ago. And she comes in my classroom for the first 30 minutes of the day till preschool opens up. So she grabs a cane this morning and takes off down the hallway. And she walked the whole, I call it the bang wall and all that. She walked that whole length of the hallway, sweeping just like she knew what she was doing. And it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. Of course, I'm biased, but it was adorable.
I saw it. It was so cute.
That is cute. I
Our,
like the idea of the chair. Sorry, Minley. I like the idea of the chair underneath the chair legs for little one. I've used like 2x4s, not just for little kids, but for kids with multiple disabilities, if they need sort of a tactile border to understand, you know, what that feels like back and forth.
Oh, two by four would be really good for the drum sounds too. If you didn't have drums, 2x4, you could make a drum out of that. That'd be really good, Pam.
Even if you have just against a wall, so you're at the wall and the 2x4, and you just get that, you know, motor memory back and forth and have a little bit of a tactile. This is about how far your cane needs to go.
I've seen hockey sticks used too.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and I've built the little hula hoop thing. And so what you do is you take a piece of PVC or you take a piece of the hula hoop that's as shoulder width for the kid, and then you connect it with the little PVC elbow joints to the hula hoops that you can carry. So it's just like, it's not an A and B, but it's a similar build. And then you've got it specific to them that it's their shoulder width and that they can, and they somehow they like really banging on that. So yeah.
I go super, super low tech. I just have them sweep between my feet, or I'll sweep between their feet at the shoulder level. And the chair, we do the chair a lot too. Those are all good strategies.
I added to my chair, it's actually the end of the table I'm sitting at, and added bells tied on a string so that when they sweep, they have to hit the sound on each side, because what'll happen is they always prefer one side, and now, and by doing that, they have to hit the bell on both sides.
yes, great ideas. Thank you. Okay, so speaking of great ideas, here's a good one. What do you do when a student refuses to use a cane?
I'm all ears. I've got one right now. Miss B,
Is
you
it
probably
the
know him.
student's choice? I've got one that said, my dad won't let me use my cane at school. I was like, your dad's not at school. I can't use it. So we're not using it. We're doing everything but cane skills.
Well, I've worked with kids before who don't want to use the cane, not with a parent saying they don't want the kid to use it, but with the kid, you know, doesn't really want to use it. And I teach cane skills anyway. And then what they do with their cane after they leave me is their business. But I feel like the onus is on me. If I feel like a kid needs a cane, then I feel like it's my job to teach them how to use the cane. And obviously the best case scenario is that they're going to use it and get that practice in when they're not with me. But I've had several kids who they fold it up, put it in their backpack, or they take it home, or they whatever. And I've had a mom that says, it's fine if you want to use the cane with her, but if she doesn't want to use it, then I don't want her to have to use it. So every year at the IEP, we would sit there, and when it'd come my turn, we'd just start chuckling, and I'd look at her and I say, okay, here we go. I said, I really feel like she needs a cane. I really feel like she needs to use it all the time. And mom would smile and she'd giggle and she'd say, well, we think that if she doesn't want to use it, she shouldn't have to use it. And I said, okay. Well, I said, well, it's my professional opinion that she needs to use it. And I just have to say it. And I say it every year so that it's documented, so that if she goes out and gets herself in trouble because she doesn't have a cane, then it doesn't come back on me. And it's unfortunate, but at least mom would let me do cane training with her as a part of, like, I always had a cane goal. You know, that's what we would do. And she knew when she saw me that she better have her cane with her. And we would go out and we would practice using her cane. And then when she got back, she'd put it away. But
I've had new student come in, that was just newly blind. It was extremely hard for him anyway, because just being, just learning that he was going to be permanently visually impaired because he'd been holding out hope. The doctor finally told him it wasn't going to happen. And talk about attitude. He had a bad chip on his shoulder. He was probably the first whole year refusing to use a cane, refusing to hardly do anything with O&M. I got to jacking around with him one day, just joking. He has a big brother and I said, how do you get around when you're home? Well, his big brother does it. And I said, well, okay, let's play a game. I'm going to be your big brother, and I'm going to go on a date, and you've called me up to take you to the grocery store. So, and this was kind of his thing anyway. So he got into his part, hey, called me by name and everything. So I threw a little hissy fit because I'm the big brother who has a date with this hot chick, and got him tickled thinking about this, and played the whole scenario out that, hey, you called me at a bad time, dude. I'm with this hot girl and she is dead, drop God, good looking and all this stuff. And I guess he got to thinking about it, because a couple of weeks later he come back and he goes, okay, can I use it just like maybe to go to the grocery store? I don't have to use it all the time. And I said, sure, anything's a start. So that worked with him, was just playing out that scenario of what it would be like in the years to come, when he had to rely on somebody else for all his transportation and his needs. So.
Melissa, what were you going to say?
I've started using the techniques that Donna Sauerberger uses, which is timing how long it takes for the student to cross 1 lane and 2 lanes of traffic, and then going to the side of the street and analyzing how, of course, these are low vision students, so having them tell me when they see the car and counting with them till when the car comes to them, do they have enough time? So getting them to understand that what their vision is and understand the risk of crossing the street, whether they have enough time to get across before that car gets to them. So that's one thing I've started using, and I found that's been helpful for those lower vision kids to get them to understand, wait a minute, I didn't see that car and I didn't have enough time to cross, but I do want to go to that store I want that independence, but I'm not really safe. So like what you were saying earlier, getting them to see themselves in that position. I like the idea of the role playing.
I also try to meet them where they're at, social emotionally as well. So with my kids that are new to the cane, I understand that it's awkward and embarrassing for them to practice in the hallway with, friends changing classes and stuff like that. So I always try to start off in private places or outside away from people who might see them. And then I always use a cane as well, so they're not the only one using a cane. But I agree that you can only control what you can control, and I make it clear that they will use the cane on lessons, and I have extras in my car because I have friends that never have their canes, so I buy extras in their sizes. But I mean, and I just try to stress the importance of it, and recognize that there's going to be times where they don't feel they need it, and they have to make those decisions for themselves as they get older. But when we're out in the community, it's not just about you, but it's also about other people seeing you too. But yeah, I don't know. I just try to remember that it's really hard to be a teenager. And what they do is what they do, but hopefully we can find places where they feel comfortable using it.
I think this is why I'm so passionate about doing the group activities and the White Cane Day activities, so that they have the opportunity to know that they're not the only one in the world using a cane, and have that interaction with other people. And this is very much the topic that we're going to hit with the panel on the White Cane Day. I didn't come with the intention of making that advertisement, but it just makes me think of it as Leah and I met with the panelists a couple of weeks ago, and they all three come from very different experiences with when they began using a cane, or why they use a cane, when they choose to and when they don't. And we're going to give them the opportunity to share that. So I think that'll be a cool thing for students to be able to hear, that, hey, here are adults who didn't always love their cane, or don't always use their cane, or here's why they finally gave in, decided to use it, and here's when it worked well for them. So I think anytime they can have that opportunity to interact with somebody else and find out they're not the only one, that's a great opportunity.
Well, depending on the student, I try to employ the help of other teachers, because it turn into the cane police. And if other teachers are saying it too, and they know it's in their IEP, and you're going to be liable if the kid falls down the stairs because you haven't mentioned where's your cane. All right, the next one is how to help parents, schools, and teachers understand the importance of O&M.
I think it's just a matter of awareness. People don't know what it is, and you know, just trying to plug what we do. And I think the White Cane Safety Day is a great way to kind of showcase what it is we do, and then just having, I don't know, teaching kids how to advocate for themselves is a big piece. People don't know what we do. And I also carry a cane, and I call it my teaching cane, because I think kids are confused and they think, we just saw this lady pull up in a car, you know, but now she's using a cane. And so I usually say, they'll say, you have a cane too? And I'll say, yeah, this is my teaching cane. And my student understands why I have a cane and that it's there for that purpose. But I think that helps bring awareness to, yeah.
I think that's a good idea. The words, my teaching cane. I'm looking at it and I'm watching things. Recently, I ran into somebody whose family members have gotten sick, and though they now have kids that are trying to take care of each other because the parents are in the hospital. And I just wonder how much more that impacts our VI kids. Their families could get just as sick just as quickly, and I don't want them to not have the independence that they can have to do what they need to do. So, I mean, I'll almost always go to safety and independence. It's like, you don't have to understand it right now, and I'm willing to explain it to you over and over again. But I know these kids can be safe, and I know they can be independent, and they can do things for themselves. And they probably get tired of hearing me say it too. But
I think one good thing that came out of our time at home was that I got like stronger relationships with parents that I normally didn't communicate very much with. So now, like, I'll send them pictures of their kid on a lesson, or update them on like things that they did well, even like not just progress report time, but trying to do it a little bit more consistently. And then I think they understand what we do a lot more now, since I was in such strong communication with them when they were at home. So now they seem more open to giving ideas or things that they would like their kid to be able to do. So like usually leaving their side at the grocery store is a big one that they don't really like think about. But as they get older, they're like, man, it'd be nice if my kid would like go get something and come back. So trying to make sure that goals address things that parents want or need has gotten their buy-in. I don't know, for the most part, teachers are just like, okay, hi, go do your thing, bye. So I don't have any issues with teachers for the most part. But.
Sometimes that community awareness can be helpful too. I've done presentations for like scout groups before, and they can earn a badge about learning about, sensory differences. And so then, the student and their friends maybe are learning about it together and talking about it. I've also done some like in-service training, I guess, when the students are younger, with parent permission, with the student's classroom, with maybe about optical devices they might be using or tools that they might need, and just kind of, helping everybody so that there's less questions for the student about, why do you need that thing, to make them feel different. And then eventually the students have learned to do that on their own whenever they're older, and they can help, make people aware as well, and be, kind of championing their tools and what they're for. So doing it that way as well.
I think sending home that I recently did this, the Michigan, I think I shared it on the listserv for the ADLs, that includes O&M as well as a ECC area. And I think for parents to see what are the age appropriate skills that their child needs, because I think especially if the child is either an only or maybe the baby of the family, they may not understand, what they ought to be doing. Or they're just a-okay with having big sister set the table, or having, always, tying their child's shoe, whatever that is. So that's really helped, just this recent case in my situation where the parent really hadn't thought about the fact that, maybe their daughter ought to be doing these things. And so we were able to write a goal that addressed the issues that the parents wanted addressed in the home. So that helped.
All right, I think we have time for one more. Strategies for motivating students.
I've used everything from food to stickers to, I saw one that said dance party. I was like, I think I can do that. Whatever I can get their interest in, if I can use it, I'll use it. One little guy liked superheroes, so we searched with binoculars for superheroes signs. I mean, just getting to know them so that I knew what they liked and try to plug it in as much as I can.
I
I've
have
even
after. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. What I do with some of my students, not all of them, it just depends on the kid, but I have like almost like a sticker chart basically of lessons. And if they have so many lessons in a row that were really good and they were focused and on task and behaving and doing everything I asked them, and we have a good one, they have like to get 10, and then they get to choose what we'll do for our next O&M lesson. So like if the older one, like if they want to go to the store, well, you have to let's do that. So I still getting my O&M lessons on something different, but they get to choose what they want to do. So if like, they'll never choose street crossing kind of lesson, but if they wanted to, that could be their lesson. Kind of give them a choice too, but they also have to earn it. And that kind of helps with some of the kids.
I like to find what the kids like. Like one student had this thing for dragons. I got him the little rubber dragons off Amazon, hid them throughout the environment, and he had to find them, or he had to follow clues until he found that one, and he got to keep it. I also used walkie-talkies, which was really fun because I kept him in my view at all times, and when he wasn't sweeping, I would whisper in the walkie-talkie, "You're not sweeping," and it just freaked him out. He goes, "How can you tell I'm not sweeping?" So that was last year all the way up in Stewartsville School. We were all over that place, the walkie-talkies, which was a good motivator for him. And I've used older brothers and sisters sometimes who's willing to be part of the team. And so anything in the gym, he was big on basketball and stuff. He wanted to play basketball. So the last 5 or 10 minutes of our session was basketball. So, anything that's a motivator that they like. And, we modify it and adapt it and make it so they can do that.
I really feel like until students get on board and understand the benefits of it, it's a lot of extrinsic motivation. Do you guys feel like that? That there's treats and rewards and things that are more tangible for them? I don't feel like they get that intrinsic motivation for many, many years.
But when they do, it is worth it. When they start asking you to do stuff that they need to be doing, it is totally worth it. And I finally got there with the student recently. So it's nice.
Well,
I don't know about you, but it is so worth it to me to buy that pack of gum or that bag of chips. Like if I can get them to do anything and work for that, it's worth the 50 cents to me.
Well, I tried a different form of motivation. It was in May, I think. I have a student who just started high school, and I went to the high school, and after we had done the route several times, I just videoed myself going through, and I narrated everything as far as what was on my right, what was on my left, and then put it on YouTube so that I could see if she watched it. So she had a map at home, and then she could listen to the video and follow along. So I'm not sure if it was wonderful, but I thought it was a good start, and we'll do it again next summer. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. So when we started, I asked for any other ideas for topics that you want to cover. And also, did you guys like this? Did you like talking about these different, I see some heads nodding. I liked it too. I love hearing all these perspectives. So what I will do is just send out another email and ask for ideas, unless you have any right now that you want to share and I can write them down. But we have 2 left, so we'll do those 2. And I will schedule something for the endish of October. So we'll have another Q&A. And then in November, December, we'll do Sarah Elizabeth with the echo identification. That's right, it wasn't echolocation. And that'll be amazing. And then we'll wait and decide what we're gonna do in the spring. So thank you for joining, and I will take a look. If you didn't put your name in the chat, please do that. You'll get a certificate for today. And I guess send me some answers when I send out the email for topics that you want to cover. Yes, Debbie, it was really good to see everybody.